Hello, welcome to today's AIPH Green City Briefing, Sustainable Water Management with Urban Planting. I'm Francesca Boyd, and I'm part of the Green City Initiative team here at AIPH. Green cities bring nature and plants into urban environments to transform spaces and lives. As part of AIPH's aim to celebrate the power of plants, we are delighted to share with you that the AIPH World Green City Awards are now open. Find out more on how to showcase and celebrate your city's achievements via the QR code now on screen. Before we delve into the topic of today's briefing, I'm just going to let you know how the webinar is going to run. First of all, I will introduce the MC. This will be followed by our first speaker, after which we will have our second speaker, followed by a move to the discussion section. This is then your opportunity to ask questions and contribute to the discussion. So as the presentations are happening, please do have a think about some questions that you might like to be discussed. You'll find the Q&A function is at the bottom of your screen. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the Worshipful Company of Gardeners for their continued support of the AIPH Green City Briefings programme. And finally, as many of you know, we capture the latest in Green City news, projects, research and initiatives from around the world in our monthly AIPH Green City Global Update. Sign up today via the link in the chat. Now, without further delay, please may I introduce our wonderful MC for today, Bruno Marques. Bruno is a registered landscape architect and educator. He completed his architectural studies at the University of Lisbon before going on to Berlin Technical University, followed by his PhD in New Zealand at the University of Ontario. Bruno has practiced in Germany, Estonia, the UK and New Zealand and has an extensive portfolio of built projects. During the past 10 years at Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, he has developed a comprehensive research agenda to embrace the formulation of frameworks on landscape rehabilitation, cultural landscapes, placemaking and Indigenous community health and well-being. He is currently the Associate Dean for the Faculty of Architecture and Design Innovation and the President of the United Federation of Landscape Architects, IFLA. I would highly recommend checking out Bruno's work if you haven't already had the chance, but today he's going to share with us more about what IFLA does and very competently run us through today's session. Thank you so much for joining us, Bruno. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Frankie, for that kind words, and welcome everyone. As Frankie said, my name is Bruno Marques, and I'm the president of the International Federation of Landscape Architects. But mostly, I'm very delighted to be your host for today's AIPH Green City Briefing on sustainable water management with urban planting. Before we dive into it, I would like you to introduce what IFLA is and does, which aligns well with the work that AIPH does in international realm. In fact, we are very proud of our collaboration for the last 3 years, where landscape and plants come hand in hand. AIPH has become one of our key strategic partners. So, without further ado, I will just guide you through a couple of slides introducing what we do. So we know that the challenges of drought and flooding are becoming increasingly present due to climate change. Traditional engineering solutions often fall short, and today we'll explore how nature, and specifically urban planting, can play a vital role in safeguarding our water resources and protecting our cities. So this aligns very well with the core values of IFLA in terms of looking into how nature provides irreplaceable goods and services for mankind. So IFLA was established in 1948 as the only international non-governmental organization that represents landscape architects worldwide. And of course, we focus a lot on dealing with education, training, research, professional practice, but mostly to protect the interests of the profession at the higher level. And this often includes the United Nations and the affiliated agencies. The role we play comes through, of course, our membership. We have 80 member associations, so these are professional bodies across different countries, and we are structured in 5 different regions, from Africa to Americas, Asia Pacific, Europe, and the Middle East. We have about 100,000 landscape architects within our membership, and we know that there are about 555 educational programs in the world, which is great. So the work that we do pretty much follows on 6 pillars, and it's very nice to see that all of this work not only aligns with the work that happens through the United Nations, but also through the work that AIPH does. So that's primarily focused on climate action and biodiversity, health, well-being, and nature-based solutions, community participation, technology and evidence-based design, food security, and traditional knowledge and indigenous practices. It's through these 6 pillars that we align everything we do at IFLA from local to regional to global. Our approach is really empowering the world through nature, and we do that through a wide array of initiatives from collaborative design workshops to community projects to have teams in action, but having above all nature at the forefront, as nature solutions are our bread and butter. Most of these also focus on advocacy and promotion, not only in terms of professional standards, but also knowledge sharing. And things like this type of webinars are also very important for us, but also focusing on research projects, policy statements, case study reports, conferences. All of these really pushes the boundaries of what the profession is, but also we can find synergies with the allied professions such as horticulturalists. IFLA just recently launched 19 working programs. Those working programs cover a wide array of topics, from age-friendly communities to climate action, to energy efficiency, to migration and inclusive communities, and so on. So these working programs also align very well with the work that happens through the United Nations, but also across our allied organizations, being one of them AIPH. We know that as an international organization, we definitely, the work we do must focus on the bigger picture. And through that, bringing people together, we're at a stage where we can't do it alone. So it's through these collaborations that we will be able to address some of the pressing issues that affect society. And as I said, the work we do it very collaboratively. We, of course, are very proud to have AIPH in our portfolio of partners, but there's many others that cover many other professions in the built environment, but also with the UN agencies. But also, before I introduce you to our fantastic lineup of speakers who are the forefront of some of this work that I just talked to you very briefly, I'd like to leave you an invitation to come to the IFLA World Congress in Nantes, France, between the 10th to the 12th of September 2025, under the topic of guiding landscapes, where we will be talking about many of the pressing issues that affect our cities, but also our landscapes at large. All right, so without further ado, I will bring forth our first speaker, Zach Tudor, Associate Director at Arup, who brings 27 years of experience in leading the practical application of beautiful urban landscapes. As the leading landscape architect, his focus is on designing healthy, resilient towns and cities, which includes the award-winning Grey to Green schemes that build sustainability and climate change resilience into the streets and spaces of Sheffield, England. He uses research-based urban greening, blue infrastructure, and multifunctional design approaches to create a wide array of design solutions that go across disciplines. So I would like now to invite Zach to take the stage.
Thank you, Bruno. So yeah, as Bruno said, I work for Arup. I sort of lead in the landscape and place resilience side of things for Arup's business across the UK, and we have sort of a number of projects throughout the world as well, where we're sort of really trying to push a more resilient and integrated approach to how we can deliver public realm schemes, both in urban centres and in rural places as well. But today we're going to be focusing more on that sort of the urban environment generally. So I suppose it's just really good to sort of always refresh our minds in terms of why we are doing this, why we're thinking differently than we have traditionally thought about designing public spaces, and why we're trying to make them more multifunctional to deal with lots of other sort of things. But it's, one of the aspects is obviously flooding. There's a number of lots of other reasons why we'd be doing this, but that's a picture from one of our cities in the north of England, not too far from where I am today in Leeds. just showing the sort of the devastation of infrastructure, of buildings, but also loss of life as well, and the impacts to our sort of natural habitats and environments, not so much on this image, but just generally as well. So it is generally just a devastating impact that we're having, and this is happening more and more on regular occurrences throughout the UK and obviously throughout the global planet as well. And it is really, it's about this sort of stuff of urban, all of the increase of urbanization, climate change generally, biodiversity crisis, the human physical mental health crises, the cost of living crisis. It's all just culminating in all these sort of impacts. And, at Arup, we believe the external spaces can actually play an awful big role in dealing with some of this stuff. It's not going to sort everything, obviously, but it can go some way to making our cities, towns, and sort of centres of urban living a more healthy, more comfortable place to sort of carry on, sort of being at ease with life, but also just making sure that we are sort of trying to sort of push back on helping nature wherever we can as well. So it's about people and nature coming together in our urban centres and using our sort of harder, harsh environments that are currently there to a better way of understanding and design. And it is about sort of really rethinking how we sort of see our streets and spaces. This was a scheme, I think you may have had some case studies on this in the past, this one, but this was the Greater Green Project, which was, well, it was 2 kilometres, it's now 4.5 kilometres. It keeps on expanding throughout the city centre spaces in Sheffield, but that was our ring road in the city, a major dual carriageway road, 4 lanes, lots of grey infrastructure stuff, but it is about trying to rethink how we can sort of live in a more beautiful environment, but also giving back to nature as well. And it is about trying to integrate all these different things that are happening. So you still have bus movement throughout the area, you still have local car access to sort of car parking, but it's sort of greatly reduced in the impact in that. But then you have space for people to sit, dwell, be within these street spaces, and it's all pulled together, I guess, with this sort of green, sinuous movement of colour and form and texture and movement of the planting vegetation that's sort of dealing with the atmospheric pollution. It's helping with water management, of flood mitigation, but also water quality benefits, and just creating a more beautiful buffered environment between the not so nice things that are happening with the road spaces and the spaces where people can have more ownership over. So it's sort of winning back space for people and nature from what was, as I said, a very grey sort of environment. And this is really about an urban regenerative approach. It's not just about a traditional way. It's not sustainable in terms of just sustaining something. We are trying to regenerate the offer for people and nature and communities to have a better way of understanding how these streets and spaces we're giving back an awful lot more than what we were presented with as at the start of a project. So it is about sort of thinking about adapting these sort of solutions using nature to help us. So looking at natural function that's happening in nature and natural systems and functions that are sort of managing water, managing heat, managing stabilization of of habitats, and actually sort of can we borrow some of that knowledge and understanding and bring it into our harder, harsh environments to actually manage that in a much more integrated and much more sustainable, holistic way. Sorry. And just a reminder that I always like to sort of show myself that's a sort of a typical anywhere space in any town, city in UK and anywhere in the world, I guess. Not many cars in that image, but it was a heavily carred environment. And that's what we managed to turn it into when we sort of started to rethink about how we could sort of deal with that space, how we could deal with the cars. We sort of managed the cars elsewhere and brought a lot more life and beauty back into this space, again, for people, but also for that natural process. And all of these images, wherever you've seen planting, they are all managing water in a sustainable way as well. So it's sort of doing all this multifunctional stuff, not just looking a nice landscape scheme. And this is about this thinking about nature and nature-based systems and how we can bring those in at all scales, whether it's mega city scale approach, or whether it's just on street corner approach stuff. It's dealing with this at urban, those sort of rural fringe areas, and then into the wilder rural places that we have as well. But today we are managing the, we're talking about the urban stuff. And in Sheffield, we like at Arup, sorry, we like to talk about a total approach to sort of designing these things. So it's trying to bring all the different systems and functions together in a total way to manage how we deal with these things. And in this particular project, it's thinking about total streets and spaces more. And that's thinking about those 4 pillars of active travel, urban greening, SUD solutions, and creating spaces that are more sociable and more playful inclusion stuff as well. So bringing those people-centered elements together to sort of bring all those benefits for local benefits. And if we can maximize all of that, it can then start to sort of tip into a more regional and global benefit scale as well. And I just wanted to quickly just go through a few of those points, really, that those underpinning values, I suppose, that we bring to play in a sort of a creative resilience approach to how we design public spaces. Number one, obviously, it's the sustainable urban drainage, which you may not all sort of have that sort of term SUDS about of understanding, but it is just managing water in a more sustainable way, taking water from hard impermeable surfaces like the roads, the footpaths, the buildings, and sort of collecting it, gathering it up at surfaces, and doing that within a planted rain garden system or bioswale systems that can manage that water for you, hold on to it, attenuate the flows during storm events, can infiltrate into the ground and lose it from the system, but you can also treat the water as well. So it's the contaminants that are present on the roadsides can be partly managed and maintained through biological activity within the healthy soils that we're creating as well. So it's, you know, highly productive, highly valuable landscapes we're creating along these roadsides. And of course, urban greening. And this really is something that we are really trying to understand better and to take on board. And it is something that's needs to be research based. It can't just be throwing a load of plants and hope for the best. We need to be trying to match up with the soil types we're providing for the functional soils, for water management principles. They're very hard, harsh environments. They're very free draining, so that they don't hold on to much water, but they're also at the same side of things, very gravel based. So they're very low fertility generally. So the plants and communities we're trying to create in these systems are that they're needing to work hard, and we're sort of ecologically looking for those environments where these plants will be able to not just sustain themselves, but hopefully thrive in these environments. And we'll talk a bit more about maintenance in a little bit, but it really is about trying to sort of create a new ecology for urban environments. We can't just assume that from a British perspective, we can just put in our native planting, our native habitats and think they will survive, because they're not going to be thriving and surviving in these harsher, harder environments that we would be putting them into. So we need to make sure we do bring in as many native things as we can do, but also making sure that we can provide the top up of the garden species as well, to sort of make sure that we get that breadth and depth of interest throughout a number of, from early spring right through to late autumn into early winter time. You've still got structure, color, interest that sort of travels right the way through all of those seasons. And of course, thinking about active travel and making sure we are that total approach. So active travel is embedded within this approach. It's not just tagged onto the roadside, it's integrated wherever we can into the street spaces to make it a happier, more beautiful option for cyclists as well. And that social value element of encouraging people to come into these spaces to recharge the batteries mentally, but also physically, encouraging people to use these streets and spaces to walk further, to get off the bus sooner, to move into the town centre, to be part of these sort of attractive environments that people are sort of starting to hunt out and crave from a daily perspective. But that sort of mental restoration on a regular basis in these wild-like places and urban centres is really being highlighted as something that's really important to capture people's sort of mental restoration generally. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but I'm presuming you'll be able to sort of get access to the slide deck at some point as well, but it's just looking at when we start to bring blue and green infrastructure together in an urban setting. These are some of the benefits we're starting to sort of see and imagine throughout these systems. So the environmental benefits, you can sort of see they're sort of quite logical, I suppose, in what we're sort of thinking about. But the more you think about the wider benefit capture, the more the list develops into something which is becoming quite an extraordinary list of benefits really now. And, you know, for what is effectively a ditch on the side of a road, for want of a better word, we are starting to gain a huge amount of interest and benefits for us, for nature, and for the environment generally. And there's your social benefits, and then the economic side of things as well. So it's sort of trying to capture that as a destination, as an interest point for people to want to start bringing them in. A lot of the schemes we work on are generally quite grey, dull environments, and probably quite antisocial in a lot of instances. So they're not populated with lots of people. So it's about, you know, if we can do all of this work and get encouraging people and new incentive to visit or to walk through these spaces, it starts to build that sort of economic value as well into all of this. And then there's just a couple of projects really quickly I wanted to just touch on. This was a large project in Mansfield, which is a small, medium-sized town in the centre of England. And we were tasked with looking at how we could protect the entire town using only nature-based solutions for flood resilience and water quality benefits as well. And that project is just coming to conclusion now after 4 years. And it's sort of just been a monster piece of work, I think, really. But it's sort of starting to show where the water companies can start to use these natural systems, natural functions in a much more proactive and beneficial way, rather than just providing grey pipes and tank systems as well. The cost benefits are there, but those sort of multifunctional capture of benefits is the thing where we're really trying to sort of start to understand what are the values of the environmental benefits from all this as well. And I think, you know, from my perspective, that's suddenly going to just really accelerate those cost financial benefits hugely when we start to understand that better from biodiversity health, but also human health side of benefits. And these are some of the ones where we've sort of been trying to, I mean, it's an entire town approach to how we're doing this, but there's a few examples here of some of the town centre things, some of the suburbs and some of the larger areas where we're capturing larger volumes of water in park spaces or nature, more natural sort of fringe areas of the town centres. And the other one was a very sort of harder environment in the city centre in Sheffield again, but it's a massive development right in the middle of the city centre. And again, it's about sort of trying to capture all of these benefits using nature, using the plant species, so the road, the cycleways, a lot of the building tops, these are podium structures. They're all using biodiverse ways of actually managing water and providing benefits throughout these areas. And we provided a new park space as well, which was a big sponge park in the centre of the town, using play as well hugely to bring in that sort of value and incentives to draw people back into the city centre as well. It's been a really big success story for the city centre this project has. And really, I just wanted to sort of end on, I suppose, there's not any detail there for you to sort of get into the understanding of the nuts and bolts, but I just wanted to just quickly say that the maintenance strategies, maintenance of these things is probably the most important thing you'll be thinking about, because, you know, anybody can design a scheme pretty much that can sort of function, look great on day one, probably day two, year 1 year, 2 year 3 looking good. But actually a lot of schemes you see start to fall away in those after those sort of time periods. So it's really using good understanding, good research-based approaches to plant communities, soil types, and also that sort of longevity of maintenance and strategies. Making these things passive design systems from a water perspective is really important as well. But, you know, some of the Greater Green project is now 10 years old. It's still looking absolutely fantastic. It's still functioning from a hydrological perspective as well. And, you know, that's what we want from these things. It's this low input of maintenance that gives you this high output of diversity and function and form. So thank you very much for listening to my whistle-stop tour of all of that. And I think I'll pass back to Bruno.
Thank you so much, Zach, for your presentation. It is fantastic to see the transformation where nature is actually placed at the forefront and the amazing amenities that people actually benefit from creating such livable urban environments. I'm really looking forward for our discussion at the end. I'm sure will be very fulfilling. We'll now be joined by Michael Hamling and his team from the city of Joondalup. Michael's current portfolio includes the capital improvements and maintenance of 588 hectares of parks, 530 hectares of natural areas and city streetscapes. Possessing qualifications in horticulture leadership, turf, and I just missed my notes here. Sorry, turf and project management, with over 40 years experience in local government. Michael's works on a diverse range of park and natural area projects, service level agreements, and organizational restructures. Michael will also be joined by Danielle, Bowler, Environment Development Coordinator, and Rebecca Maccario, Manager Strategic Organizational Development, who will share their valuable insights from a local government's perspective. Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bruno. It gives us great pleasure to be here to talk to everyone tonight regarding our award-winning submission for the World Green Cities Awards for the Living Green for Water. So what I'll provide this evening is just a summary of that our presentation. So background information for the city of Joondalup. It's located in the southwest of Western Australia. The traditional custodians of the land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. The total land area is around 99 square kilometres. It's one of the largest local governments in Western Australia by population, with 160,995 people and with a total of 62,148 dwellings. Our city is renowned for its beautiful wildlife, natural bushland and extensive wetlands, including 17 kilometres of coastline and 13 kilometres of conservation category wetlands. The city of Joondalup contains a variety of infrastructure, including, as Bruno has mentioned, we have 580 hectares of parks, 530 hectares of natural areas. We have 159 civic and community buildings, over 1,000 kilometres of roads and car parks, nearly 1,000 kilometres of pathways, and 707 kilometres of pipes and drainage infrastructure. In regards to our strategic initiatives, Joondalup 2032 is the City of Joondalup's 10-year strategic community plan. It's an overarching document that informs all of our other plans and services. Every local government in Western Australia is required to have a 10-year strategic community plan. The city's vision is to have a strong focus on sustainability, livability, active lifestyles, and friendly social interactions. The city aims to be environmentally aware and socially responsible by creating healthy environments with protected bushland and accessible parks and green spaces. The city implements a climate change strategy which integrates mitigation and adaptation, includes corporate and community mitigation targets, outlines the projects to address mitigation and adaptation. The strategy covers 6 key focus areas of infrastructure and assets, parks and reserves, land use, planning and development, natural environment, corporate responsibility, and good governance plus community wellbeing. Positive environmental impacts of the projects in the strategy include to reduce ambient air temperature and cleaner air through absorption of polluting gases, reduce cooling energy consumption costs and water savings through reduced evaporation rates, increased habitat for wildlife, street appeal and community amenities, including safer walking environments and shading, and improved community health and wellbeing. The city has recently developed a new climate change plan, which is aimed to be finalised in 2025. In regards to water conservation, the city has a groundwater licence to extract over 4 million kilolitres of water per year to service its irrigation needs. A significant decrease in Perth's annual rainfall since the early 80s has resulted in unsustainable use of the superficial aquifer used to irrigate the majority of parks, not only in Joondalup but in the Perth metropolitan area. It has been mandated by the state government that there will be a 10% reduction in the city's water licence coming into effect in 2028. The city has implemented landscaping and irrigation projects within its parks to reduce irrigated areas by implementing hydrozoning, eco-zoning and water-wise landscaping. Water consumption is reduced by creating hydrozones to allow different watering rates to be applied depending on usage, and eco-zones where turfed areas are mulched in different areas of the park, which reduces water consumption. The smart control irrigation system uses scientifically based evidence to control groundwater use in parks and sporting grounds across the city. The controllers automate the groundwater required and daily based on evaporation rates obtained from the city's 3 weather stations and switch off the system when it also rains. This has reduced the amount of groundwater the city uses for irrigation purposes. The city's heart is a central controller which can also be operated through a tablet or a phone. The city decreased groundwater usage by over 86,000 kilolitres in the first year of operation in 2021 as compared to 2019-20 due to the smart control irrigation system, which is the equivalent of 35 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The city also implements a Leafy City program to increase the canopy cover through planting trees on urban streetscapes. The program mitigates the urban heat island effect and creates cooler, inviting green spaces for residents. Locations for street plantings are identified through thermal heat mapping and tree canopy surveys. This program was launched in May 2017 with 6,300 trees planted to date, and as a result, the city's canopy cover has increased from 9% in 2014 to 12% in 2024, and it's delivered where it is most needed. The city also implements a winter tree planting program, which involves trees being planted in parks, median streets, and also on other verges of the city at the request of residents. The program includes free trees being planted on residents' verges at their request. The trees are selected from the preferred street tree species list and tree plantings are undertaken each winter. This program also has resulted in 10,000 trees being planted in the last 4 years, in addition to the Leafy City tree plantings. The city collaborated with BirdLife WA on a project to build bird habitat and connect community to nature. This project resulted in the planting of over 5,000 bird-friendly native seedlings in 2 of the city's parks, and the community assisted with the planting seedlings. Workshops and events were also held to promote creating bird-friendly gardens. Second to this, we have now adopted this practice throughout our new landscapes when they're being developed through the capital works programs. The city also supports and conducts revegetation works in natural areas. City staff use local seeds and cuttings for native plant propagation. The city grows 10,000 native seedlings each year to give to friends groups for revegetation in natural areas. Native seedlings are provided to our 19 friends groups that help conserve our natural areas. Species are planted in the areas where seeds and cuttings were taken to retain genetic purity. Growing our own native seedlings saves the city 30 to 40% in planting costs. The city jointly manages the Yallagongga Regional Park. It's one of the major water bodies, freshwater bodies within the city, with the City of Wanneroo, a neighbouring local government, and the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, which is a state government department. Yallagongga Regional Park is an area of high ecological significance with 13 kilometres of conservation category wetlands and bush forever sites. The city jointly implements the Yallagongga Integrated Catchment Management Plan through biodiversity projects, water quality management initiatives, environmental education initiatives for the community, and collaboration with friends groups which help also conserve the park. Further to this, the city implements an ongoing environmental education program which includes water-wise initiatives such as water-wise verge rebate programs, with rebates given to 101 residents in 2022-23 to increase water-wise native vegetation on verges. Native plant giveaway with over 8,000 native plants given to 750 residents in 2023-24 to increase local biodiversity and canopy cover. Also, a native plant giveaway with 8,000 native plants were given away to residents in 2024-25. Water-wise demonstration gardens, including at the city's administration building, and in Rhode Island and the suburbs to encourage community members to create similar gardens. Waterwise gardening community workshops to encourage the community to conduct waterwise gardening practices. We also collaborate with other local governments on the annual WA Tree Festival, with 50 local governments involved in 2024 to celebrate trees and encourage tree plantings and conservation. Also, we implement an environmental community funding program to provide funding for schools and community groups, which enable waterwise gardens and tree plantings. The city has many partnerships. The city collaborates and works closely with key stakeholders and partners on waterwise initiatives, including state government agencies, other local governments, the West Australian Local Government Association, BirdLife WA, friends groups, community groups, plus schools and universities. Through all these initiatives, the city has won numerous Waterwise awards for outstanding Waterwise initiatives and practices, including we were finalists for the Bankshare Foundation National Sustainability Awards for the Biodiversity Award in 2025, the AIPH World Green City Awards in the Living Green for Water category, and the inaugural Youth Award in 2024, Platinum Waterwise Council of the Year in 2022, Waterwise Council since 2010, and the Gold Waterwise Council since 2015, the Gold Waterwise Aquatic Centre in 2020, Environmental Leadership Sustainability Awards in 2022, and the Water Sensitive City Award in 2021. The city monitors and reports our Waterwise initiatives and practices regularly, and we keep our community and stakeholders informed through the annual report, the annual State of the Environment report, quarterly corporate business plan reports, annual Waterwise Council Action Plan report, and the biannual customer satisfaction survey. So where to from here? The city is developing a new climate change plan, which is aimed to be finalised in 2025, which builds on the key achievements and learnings from our previous successful strategy. The state government has mandated a 10% reduction in the city's groundwater licence to come into effect in 2028. To ensure accurate water usage, the city is in the process of installing digital water meters on all of the city's 270 bores, which will automatically feed accurate water usage data back to the central irrigation computer on a daily basis. We will continue elected member and community buy-in as it is essential. We will continue to provide education initiatives to schools to enrich the future generations in waterwise and environmental sustainability behaviour. As a leading local government in Western Australia, it is important to continue to advocate the city's position on important environmental issues via leading federal and state government agencies and professional bodies such as Parks and Leisure Australia and World Urban Parks. And in closing, as a wise person once said, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Thank you. Thank you, Bruno.
Thank you, Michael, Danielle, and Rebecca for really showing us how every city should really embrace nature as a way to address some of the big pressing issues, particularly climate change. It's very reinvigorating to see the amazing work you guys doing, and it makes me feel very jealous that not every city is following your footsteps. We wish that they're all going to be tagging into this webinar and learning from the three of you. I think now it's time to bring back Zach, and we will open up for Q&A. So those of you online, you can use the Q&A function to type your questions, and we will bring that into the discussion, and we will start with some warming up questions just so those online can think about what they would like to ask. And Zach, I'm probably going to start with you. So it's very interesting to see the amazing initiative, the Great to Green schemes in Sheffield, and really seeing how much you have contributed to the integration of green and blue infrastructure and making those places so livable. I've kind of like a geeky kind of question immediately, which focus a lot on in plants, and I think particularly that your focus has been on retrofitting nature-based solutions. So how does plant selection differ when designing for water management in existing urban environment compared to new developments? And are there specific plant characteristics or species you prioritized for their hydrological benefits in those projects?
So yeah, I think, well, it's a good question because when you think about water management, you immediately think about species that are going to be more marginal vegetation things and stuff. But actually, a lot of the systems we are planting, they are dry systems generally, so you can maximize the storage potential and water holding onto volumes during the wetter periods of time. So a lot of the urban planting is into gravel beds. And a lot of it's up to 70% of gravel, waste gravels from quarry waste or from construction waste projects, where we're sort of mixing all that sort of green waste into that. But it's primarily very free draining and very low fertility. So the species need to be adapted to that and to be able to cope with it, occasional inundation and filling up and overtopping of water into those bed areas. So that really is the sort of the crux of it. And a lot of our native vegetation doesn't really cope with that very well. It likes to be a wetter environment more permanently. It can't really deal with the heat of our urban centres very well either. A lot of our tree species are suffering. Our native species are suffering from that perspective. So it's trying to look ecologically about where we can use and borrow some of those species that are adapted to those sort of environments already and actually bolster our native species in those plantings really. So it is a huge part of that. But also from a plant selection perspective, we tend to try and work with clump forming species more than spreading and creeping species because we have a really low maintenance approach. So all those plantings are really just dealt with in one big cut in a year. So in February time, they go in with big hedge trimmers. And because this is hectares and hectares of sort of spaces along roadsides, we can't just do it with secateurs and everything else. So we go in with hedge trimmers, cut everything back to about 150 and everything gets collected up. So most of the plant species need to be clump forming type species to help us in that process really. And of course, then you sort of horticulturally, you want to select species that have got interest throughout all of the seasons. And then we are also identifying which species are good for our native invertebrate larval food source species and pollinators that can actually extend the pollen and nectar potential into the longer autumn periods where our invertebrates are staying active for longer now as well into the autumn periods because it's staying hotter throughout those periods of time where that have normally been going into hibernation earlier, then they're now active. So they need the food source to sort of carry on maintaining that as well. So there's loads of factors in trying to sort of make these things work. I mean, I think number one, they need to be able to survive and thrive in these environments. And then we start to refine after that, I guess, really.
No, absolutely. And I think that probably leads to another question around the economics and the benefits that derive from these projects. There's a question that tries to encapsulate that a little bit in terms of how are things progressing with the economics of SUDs, which I think was sustainable urban drainage, right? Is it becoming easier to motivate the return on investment by improved water quality and flood resilience? How do you persuade stakeholders to believe in all of this?
Yeah. And I think it's becoming, I mean, there's various different client bases. So the water companies, the water authorities in the UK are being challenged to make sure they are dealing with water in a more sustainable way in the future. We have lots of issues around spillage of sewage into our seas, into our river systems. So part of that is sort of trying to manage the water away and stop water from having to go into the sewer in the first place. So if it's relatively clean on surfaces, we pull that back from there. So that's got huge amounts of funding associated with it at the moment. They go through funding periods, and this is a new start of a new funding period for our water companies. And they are tasked with sort of managing that in a way where a percentage of that water now needs to be dealt with in a nature-based way, which is where the Mansfield project was a bit of a pilot. We've been sort of working on to show that you can actually do that in a at source solution. So it's not dealing with just big holes in the ground. We're managing water on street by street basis. So that funding
Fabulous.
pot is very,
I
very
will now
much
pass
focused.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I think you got cut off there for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm back. Sorry, go, it's finished. That's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you, Zach, for that. I was just about to move down under to our team in Australia. There is some questions here for you. So one starts by looking into the preferred street tree species list. who contributed to that, and your focus on native species a lot. So the actual list is not transferable, but what could other cities learn from you in the process of developing a similar list?
Cool. Thanks for the question, Bruno. When we first developed our list, there's not that many trees which actually make a really good street tree in Australian conditions. We are considerate of limb drop. We're considerate of the size of the fruit that the trees drop, and so forth. So we do focus probably about 70% of 80% of our trees as native, not necessarily to Western Australia, but native to Australia. And then we'll intermix that with some deciduous trees, especially when we're looking for passive solar into the houses and so forth on those streets which are facing east-west. But on that, we went and consulted with an arboricultural firm in WA. We've got years of experience in dealing with other local government authorities, and we've been able to narrow it down to, I think we've got a list of 40 trees, which we will then roll out as part of the planting program. And part of that will be based on the size of the verge, the soil type, whether we've got power lines. We have different soil types within the city, which then also influences what trees that we have. But when you consider the amount of trees which are available to plant in a park or available to plant at home, the list which actually works as a street tree in a verge environment, as Zach was saying, in very harsh conditions, is quite limited.
Mm-hmm. And that's very fair. We have a question from one of our attendees, Caroline Goller, which I think is the president of the Landscape Institute. So what soil protection mechanisms have worked best for you in Western Australia to save water, regarding mulches, plant species, cover, native, non-native plant selection, or other?
So a few parts of that question, Bruno, but in part, we deal with hydrophobic soils in WA. We have an issue because we're basically built on a sand dune as such. So we have the issue where, especially during summer, if we do get rain and we're trying to put irrigation on, the water just does not penetrate through. It will actually run off and cause erosion issues. So we will ensure that we will, a bit like what Zach was talking about, we will add wetting agents, we will add soil conditioners, mulches into our soil profile to create an organic base that will hold water and give the trees the best advantage in putting in. So for us, for example, if I'm planting a tree and that tree might be worth, I said, say $150 to buy and purchase, it would cost us at least another $150 to put it into the ground, to put all the soil additives and things that we needed to do to give the best chance of growing into the tree that we want it to be. As I mentioned, we will select the best species of tree or shrub to suit the purpose of what we're doing. So if we're within the city and we've got a theme, a landscape design team, which will provide colour, they're not poisonous, they don't have spines and so forth, and fairly easy maintenance. So they're the things that we'll consider, and our landscape architect team consider when they're putting a plan together, whether it's for a new park or within the urban environment.
Mm. You tap a little bit in all the costing, and if I would be from a local government, that probably will be something I would be particularly interested to know more. And I think this question probably goes to both of you in Australia and the UK. When cities have limited funds for big projects, does the funding come from the government? What examples of public-private partnerships have contributed to your work and to accomplish your outcomes?
Shall I go first? Yeah, it depends purely on the type of project, really. The water companies, as I mentioned before, are investing heavily in blue and green infrastructure protection, but we also have still large programs of funding for a more resilient and green approach to public realm design from central government as well. We do have development money, so councils will get money from developers as they come through as well, and they'll save that up for delivering a larger impact of scheme throughout the city regions. But generally, yeah, I mean, we used to get a lot of money from Europe as well, but that no longer sadly happens. But that was more focused around resilience, and a lot of the Greater Green work we did was around resilience, biodiversity benefits, and so on from European funding. But it's primarily from water industry at the moment, or from the regional and local and central government funding.
Thank you, Zach. What about our counterparts in Australia?
Yeah, it's a really good question. A lot of it is funded through the city, but we do have some support from our water corporation, which is our water provider here in Western Australia. The project that Michael spoke about, where we provided water-wise plants to the community, that was sponsored through the water corporation. So some of that funding has come from them. We also do get some funding through the state government. We've got a really big push here for the state's urban greening strategy. So we do get some funding to plant trees as part of that funding as well. Quite often the grant programs, they're competitive funding. So you're competing against other local government authorities for a fairly small pool of funding. So yeah, it is limited. The majority of the funds do come from the city.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a mixed approach, right? There's not particularly one funding source. Zach, going back to you, of course, the work you talked to us today is very focused in UK. However, Arup works globally. How different or common are the water issues for cities around the world? We know that flooding and drought are two prevailing issues that many cities experience worldwide.
Yeah, that's a really good question actually, because things do change hugely wherever we are. We're doing work in North Africa at the moment, in Morocco. We're doing a lot of work in Peru at the moment, and everything is very, very different. We are sort of doing a countrywide scale approach of stuff in Peru at the moment, looking at protecting glacial as they're starting to accelerate their melting, but also through they've had some really bad periods of time where they've gone through some quite bad earthquakes which have dislodged glaciers as well, because they are not as fixed as they were before, and that's had really devastating consequences of communities and settlements below that. So it's trying to manage water in a much larger scale than we're doing on a lot of the UK street side stuff. And then also even Morocco, it's very arid obviously, but it's also seasonal, so you're having to manage water in a seasonal way, whereas the UK is more, I'm not saying it's wetter every day of the week in UK, but it's a much more balanced managing water throughout all seasons really, whereas you have to just intensely manage water in certain periods and certain seasons in a more arid climate really. So that's the real differences. So yeah, it changes hugely wherever we're working really.
And back to our colleagues in Australia, you mentioned that back to the idea of funds, that those can be a little competitive. I think my question for you is how much initiatives like AIPH, the World Green City Awards, or similar actually help in generating the buzz around the work that you guys do, and how much of that helps to raise the competitiveness in obtaining some of those funds?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think the city's benefited greatly from being a recipient of the award. It's really helped our profile. When we do apply for those grant funding applications, we're able to use those experiences as part of support for the application and acknowledgement of all of the work that the city's done to date. So I think, yeah, we've gained an enormous amount through the recognition of the awards. So it's been, yeah, really great for the city.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's also helped us with other award applications. I think it's really raised our profile. It's helped us become a finalist in the Banksia Foundation Sustainability Awards recently. So yeah, it's helped us with getting further funding, but also further recognition for our efforts. Yeah.
And I think looking forward, what will be, the key practical considerations and even perhaps the unique challenges that you face in the long term, management of those urban planting schemes or any other solutions that you have explored? What are the things that you like everyone to be aware of if they decide to embark in a similar process as you guys did with the city of Joondalup?
I think you need to be innovative. You need to do your research, but you need to not be afraid to go out and try things and do things differently. Just don't follow the same old from what someone else might be doing. As Zach mentioned earlier, we are a seasonal city. So for us, we get our 800 mil of rain through winter over 4 or 5 months, and then our summers are quite dry. So it's being able to sustain these landscapes in a way which we might need to have some superficial water just to keep things ticking over in summer, but also to ensure that that doesn't limit us to create the green vegetation in the areas we need, because they're the lungs of the city. We need to have that canopy cover to reduce the environmental impact of the heat island effect and global warming. But we need to be smart in how we use our water, and we need to be able to demonstrate. And I think it's being able to demonstrate what we do and being able to record what we do and show people, hey, these are the savings that we can get, and we can demonstrate it. It's not just pie in the sky stuff. We can actually show you these are the savings that we've done, and these are the benefits that we've created for not only our residents, but everybody else who uses the city and comes and visits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where the magic happens and the creative outcomes come along.
Bruno, can I just add to that point, sorry, as well? I think, and I've talked about that research-based approach and ecological niches of looking at where we can use those plants to sort of benefit us in our urban places that are harsher. But we need to also be thinking what's happening what's the climate going to be like in 5 to 10 years time as well. If we're planting now, the planting that I've been planting 10 years ago is still doing great, but actually in 10 years, what is our climate going to be like in our city that we're designing in this one or whatever, because it's going to be very different to what it is today. So that's why we're constantly having to, I think, sort of keep in terms of that research-based approach to understanding what is going to survive and thrive in the next 10 years, as climate constantly keeps changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zach, you kind of open to something that I'm also interested to hear from both of you. It's looking to the future. The future at the moment looks a little grim, unfortunately, but will the future generations, can they expect green and beautiful cities? Has the shift from grey to green been widely accepted by society? How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it has to some degree, but it's still not been fully embraced by any stretch, I don't think, really. I think Michael's great quote before about when's the best time to plant a tree. I think it's absolutely brilliant, because we need to be acting yesterday to deal with the situations we have now, and the longer we leave it for, we're thinking it's going to cost a lot now, but the longer we leave it for, those consequences are only going to get more and more financially difficult for us to manage as we move forward. So you trying to use nature, as I said before, to actually help us in a lot of these instances, about whether it's city cooling, whether it's water quality, whether it's flood mitigation, whether it's just making these spaces look more attractive for us to be within, whether it's helping biodiversity generally. We need to be acting now at a larger scale than just doing little bits and playing with things, really. We need to be city scale approach to sort of try to sort of push back on how our climate is affecting us now.
Just to add to that, it's also really trying to encourage that sense of a shared responsibility. and that the community also has a role to play in increasing biodiversity in their gardens and the areas that they have control over. So we're really trying to encourage that joint approach as well.
Yeah, really, really good point that I think. Yeah, it's not just about the cities or the bigger organisations to deal with this stuff. Everybody needs to be helping and supporting that. Yeah, good point.
No, absolutely. No, I think the biggest learning internationally is that we can't do it alone. We need all to pedal in the same direction. Well, thank you so much, Zach, Michael, Danielle, and Rebecca, from taking time and share your knowledge and expertise at today's AIPH Green City Briefing. I've personally learned a lot, and I go away with at least a renewed sense that we are doing the right thing, and there's a way forward, really, to keep battling the big problems, the big issues that we have globally. So from my end, keep up the good work. We need more successful stories as those that you shared with us today. I would like also to thank AIPH for inviting me to MC this briefing, and I will pass now back to Frankie to wrap up the session.
Thank you very much, Bruno, and thank you all for joining us today for this AIPH Green City Briefing. Thank you for your brilliant emceeing, and also to our speakers, Michael, along with Rebecca and Danielle, and also to Zach for that presentation. Really interesting. And as you say, time to innovate. To you, the audience from around the world, thank you for joining us. Our next briefing is looking at growing communities and embracing nature, and that is on the 17th of July. I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. This session has been recorded and it will be available on the AIPH YouTube channel shortly, as well as via our LinkedIn page. Finally, could I thank our sponsors of the briefing, the Worshipful Company of Gardeners. Until next time, thank you, goodbye, have a wonderful morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you are in the world, from me and all of the AIPH Green City team.